Paratmanamekam jagadbijamadyam niriham nirakaram onkar vidyam yato jayate palyate yena vishvam tamisham bhaje liyate yatra vishvam. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Revered Swami Vivekananda Ji Maharaj, my pranams to him, and all the other revered Swamis assembled here, my pranams, and my affectionate regards to all of you, dear devotees. Today, I have been asked to talk on this subject of Advaita in everyday life. This is a topic which many people have spoken about in the past, and many people will be speaking about this subject in the future as well. Because it is paramount, most important subject. And repetitively addressing this subject, as I said, is necessary. And this repetition is not a defect. In our spiritual tradition, the repeated statement of the Supreme Reality is not considered to be a defect. Rather, it is a necessity. Because we as human beings, we tend to forget the supreme standpoint. And in order to make this enter deep into our hearts, it is necessary that we repeatedly pay attention to this great teaching of Advaita, so that it begins to become a reality in our life. Sri Ramakrishna had said, Advaita Gyan Achale Bendhi, then you lead your life. Tie the knowledge of Advaita to the corner of your cloth, and then lead your life. In my opinion, this is a very important teaching coming from Sri Ramakrishna. But interestingly, we pay attention to all of his other teachings, which are also important, but not much discussion is done on this teaching of Sri Ramakrishna. So when we talk about Advaita in daily life, we have to understand that all the teachings that we have in our Hinduism, Hindu Sanatana Dharma, they are all derived from the Vedas. And by Vedas, let us understand that it is not a book. Vedas mean the infinite, eternal treasure of spiritual truths and principles. It's a treasure of spiritual truths and principles, which is eternally existing. It is not a book. And there are some people, seekers of truth, who discover these spiritual truths and principles. We refer to them as rishis. And it is these great rishis who transmit this knowledge of the supreme reality through a succession of disciples. And that is how in this great Guru Shishya Parampara, the supreme knowledge comes down to us, to our own present day. So there is a great parampara behind it. It's nothing new. It is eternal. Every time a great spiritual teacher comes on the scene, the teacher comes to once again reiterate that truth according to the needs of the present time and the age. Sri Ramakrishna also came to keep before the world this very truth. Now, in the Vedas, if you just see, there are teachings of various kinds, pertaining to the most grossest level to the most subtlest, pertaining to people belonging to different stages of human evolution. But if we squeeze all these teachings of the Vedas, the essential, the core message of the Vedas is simple. What the Vedas have to say is simply this: Ekam Sat. Truth is one. And what is this truth? It is Sat, Chit, Anandam. It is Brahma. Nothing apart from this actually exists. This is what the Vedas have to teach. And all the other teachings, they are all meant to help the human being to slowly rise to this level of the supreme understanding of the reality. So the Vedas say, Sadeva Somya Idam Agra Asit. In the beginning, dear, there was only one reality. Ekameva Dvitiyam Brahma. Brahman, the non-dual reality. Neha Nanasti Kinchana. In this reality, there is not the tinge of multiplicity or duality. Mrityum samrityum gacchati yah iha naneva pashyati. Anyone who sees duality and multiplicity and considers it to be true and real goes from death to death. Yatra hi dvaitam eva bhavati. As if there is duality and multiplicity. Brahme Vedam Sarvam. All this is nothing but the one and non-dual Brahman. Atme Vedam Sarvam. All this is nothing but the Atman. And we can go on and on and on. The Vedas essentially tell the entire human race that there exists only one reality, which is non-dual. Non-dual means nothing apart from it actually exists. Now, if this is the teaching of the Vedas, interestingly, if this is the supreme truth, what is our experience? Do we experience anything which is non-dual in our life, day-to-day life? We are talking about Advaita in everyday life. It's completely grounded in your life and my life. It deals with our core, essential, existential problems. I'm talking about the existential problems. Everyday life. Our everyday life can be based on two platforms. Either it can be based on the supreme truth, and the consequences of that will be of one kind, or our everyday life can be based upon something which is fictional, and the consequences of that will be of totally an opposite kind. Again, I'm reiterating this point. Our day-to-day life, it can be based on two standpoints. Either truth or fiction. Now let us try to understand this point. Now what the great rishis have told us, what Vedas teach us, that there exists only one reality which is non-dual. In that case, what is our experience? In our experience, interestingly, we experience only duality and multiplicity. We don't experience anything which is non-dual. Any one of us here, we see only multiplicity. Nanatvam, Dvaitam. And what is this Nanatvam and Dvaitam? I existing separated from you. I existing separated from the world. I existing independently, as if independently existing separated from Ishvara, God. This experience or awareness of mutual separation, a mutual distancing, this is our experience. We find ourselves mutually distanced from each other, mutually separated from each other. The jiva is as if independently existing, separated, distant from Bhagavan. The jiva is existing as if separated and distanced as if from other jivas. The jiva is existing independently as if it is distant from the world. This jiva, Jagat and Ishvara mutually appearing to be separated and mutually distanced. This is what is our present state of awareness. We experience, in short, or rather we can say that our everyday life is based upon this sense of mutual separation and mutual distancing from each other. Now, the consequences of this kind of a life which is based upon this awareness about mutual separation and mutual distancing is of one kind. What is the first consequences of being separated from God? The first consequence in our everyday life. That consequence is bhayam, fear. Everybody is in the grip of fear. The moment we distance ourselves from God, the moment we distance ourselves from the Supreme Reality, the first consequence of that is bhayam, fear. Every creature in this creation is gripped by fear. Bhayam, bhayam, bhayam. Bhayad agnistapati, bhayastapati surya, bhayad indrashchagnischa, mrityurdhavati panchama. Everything is in this creation is gripped by fear. Bhayam, bhayam, bhayam. Bhayam is at the root, at the core of every human being. We are trying to cover it up by being forgetful of it, but yet it doesn't leave us. See, I'm talking about everyday life of every human being. If it is stationed and based upon this sense of mutual separation and mutual distancing, the first consequence of that is fear. And this fear doesn't leave us. No matter we try to forget it, we try to cover it up in different ways, but fear grips us constantly, a sense of insecurity. The second consequence of this sense of separation and mutual distancing is apurnata. In Sanskrit, apurnata. We all feel a sense of incompleteness, unfulfilled. Nobody is fulfilled here. No matter how much money you have, no matter how much you drown yourself in physical and sensory enjoyments, we remain unfulfilled, incomplete, apurna. The moment the jiva is experiencing itself separated from the Supreme Reality, it is bound to experience and it is bound to remain apurna. There is no other way. All the struggle of the human society is once again the struggle to go back to Purnata, to the state of fulfillment. So the second consequence of this sense of reality in this state in which we experience everything mutually separated and mutually distanced is apurnata. The third consequence is atripti. No one is satisfied here. Atripta. Every jiva is born atripta and the jiva dies atripta. Atripta means dissatisfied. No amount of physical things or physical indulgences can bring satisfaction to the jiva. It is impossible. The other consequence of this sense of separation is desire, kamana. When I am separated from this world which I am experiencing, my heart is filled with desire. And it is this desire is that power which makes us restless throughout the life. Desire to acquire something which is appearing to be separated from me. The desire makes us go round and round in this world in different ways, and it makes our life miserable. Then we have raga and dvesha, attachment and aversion. The moment something is existing separated from me, then either I am attached or attracted towards it, or I am repelled by it. This is also a miserable state. And finally, what is the consequence of this state of existence in which we are existing independently, as if independently existing, separated from God, separated from the world? The last consequence of this is we are trapped in the cycle of birth and death. The samsara chakra goes on endlessly as long as our everyday life is based upon this bheda drishti. As I said, our life can be either based upon something which is fictional, or it can be based upon something which is true. Our everyday life. Now we have to probe into this issue and try to find out what is fictional and what is actually true. Now we have seen the consequences of our life based upon this bheda drishti. Now the conclusion of the great masters, the rishis, they say that this frame of existence in which we find each one of us mutually existing, separated and distanced from each other, distanced from God. We are seeing God as if God is far away and distanced from us. We are seeing as if world is existing separated from God. Now the great rishis, they say that this state of existence cannot be true. This is referred to as a state which is mithya. A beautiful word comes here. The great masters have this word used for this experience is mithya. We need to understand this point very clearly. So the conclusions of the great master, the rishis, is this: Brahma Satyam, Jagat Mithya. Usually this statement is attributed to the great teacher of Advaita Vedanta, Sri Shankaracharya. But actually this statement comes in the Upanishad itself. It is a statement which is there in Niralambo Upanishad. Shankaracharya has actually taken it from there. But it is a great fact, a simple fact, which has been told to the entire human race. What is the meaning of Brahma Satyam and Jagat Mithya? First, let us try to understand what is Satyam. What do we mean by the word Satyam? What is the definition of Satyam? Satyam means anything which exists at all the points of time, in the past, in the present, and in the future. A thing which can never be sublated or negated, a thing which eternally exists, which doesn't change. such a thing alone can be said to be true, truth, satyam. Now, the question is, in our day-to-day life, again, it's everyday life, do we experience anything which satisfies the condition of this definition of truth? We don't experience anything which is truth. Truth means something which cannot be negated, which cannot be denied, which cannot be sublated at all the 3 points of time, which is Trikala Abadhita. Trikala Abadhita. In all the 3 points of time, which is Abadhita, which cannot be negated. In our present state of existence, where we experience this world, everything is changing. Everything is transient. Everything is impermanent. Everything is getting destroyed. Pratikshanam anyata svabhava. Everything is nashwaram. Everything is ashashvatam. Can we say that this is true, what we are experiencing? We cannot say it is true. Then does it mean that it is false? We can neither say it is false, because we are experiencing it. We cannot say this is false, because it is a matter of experience. And because we are experiencing it, can we say that it is true? We can neither say it is true. This is a mixture of truth and falsity. Sri Shankaracharya beautifully says, Satya and Anrita, as if have mixed up here. So what we are experiencing, this is what is referred to as mithya, something which is experienced and yet which is not absolutely existing. The experience of something which is not absolutely existing and yet which is appearing. What is absolutely existing is Brahman and Brahman alone. But something else appears to be existing, about which we cannot say that it is non-existing, because we are experiencing it. And because we are experiencing it, it doesn't either become true. Brahman alone is Satyam. What we are experiencing is a play of light and darkness. It is a play of truth and falsity. It is strange. It is indescribable. It is anirvachaniya. It is maha adbhutam. It is adbhutam. This is the only thing Vedanta says about this plane of existence in which we find ourselves to be mutually separated, mutually distanced from God. This state of existence is actually nothing but maha adbhuta. Apart from that, we cannot say anything about it. We cannot say it is false because it is experienced. Neither can we say it is true because it goes away. Everything is going away here. Nothing is permanent. This is the meaning of Brahma Satyam and Jagat is Mithya. This frame of existence in which we find ourselves mutually separated from God, separated from each other, this plane of existence is referred to as the Mithya dimension of existence. Now, to make this point a little more clearer, Shankaracharya, in all his wonderful commentaries, he says that this is like Maru Marichika, just like a mirage. And Swami Vivekananda, in one of his talks in America, in order to make us understand the relationship between this Jagat and Brahman, he uses this very illustration, the illustration of mirage, that is Maru Marichika. And he says, out of his own experience, he says that once when he was walking in Rajasthan, Rajputana at that time, Swamiji, as he was walking in the desert, he was very thirsty. We know what is the temperature in the deserts, midday sun. Perhaps he was walking for a long time. And he was very thirsty and he was looking for water. And at that time, suddenly he saw at a great distance that there was water there. And he was very overjoyed seeing this water. And he started walking towards that water. And Swamiji says that he walked several kilometers towards that water, and the more and more he was going towards the water was receding backward and backward. The more and more he was walking towards the water was receding backward and backward. Suddenly it struck that this is what is called as Maru Marichika. This is what is known as mirage. There is not one drop of water there, and yet water appears. What was existing there is nothing but desert and desert alone. Swamiji uses this illustration, about which Shankaracharya repeatedly mentions in his commentaries. This is the relationship between what we are experiencing and what is true, that is Brahman. It is one reality which is appearing in this form. As I said, what is mithya? Mithya is the experience of something which is not absolutely existing and which appears. In the desert, when Swamiji was seeing the water appeared to be real for the time being. Can we say that water was not existing? As long as Swami Vivekananda was ignorant about it, water was existing. And the moment the knowledge dawned in his mind, then even when the water is appearing, he knows there is no water there. There is desert and desert alone. What a wonderful thing. This is precisely the status of our experience, the fact of human experience. Presently, this framework in which we are existing, in which everything seems to be mutually separated and mutually distanced, it appears to be real. But when the supreme knowledge will dawn, we will understand what is existing here is Brahman and Brahman alone. Brahman alone is existing. Everything else is appearing to be existing. It doesn't have an absolute existence. Yet it is experienced. This is what is the meaning of Brahma Satyam and Jagan Mithya. And the second sentence with Shankaracharya, beautiful. Usually we don't pay attention to the second sentence. That is very important. What Shankaracharya says there. This jiva, each one of us, if we inquire into our true nature, what will reveal, what will be discovered, this jiva, you, me, each one of us, is nothing but Brahman. The sense of separation from Brahman is fictional. It is only owing to avidya and anadi avidya. It is only owing to Mahamaya that we feel that we are separated from God. So jiva brahmaiva, he says, beautiful. That is the real status of every man and every woman, every living creature. It is the status of this entire creation itself. Jiva brahmaiva. Jagatah brahmaiva. This jagat is nothing but Brahman. What is actually existing here is Brahman and Brahman alone. Even when this talk is going on, this interaction is going on, what is here actually existing is nothing but that one non-dual Brahman, which is appearing in this strange form. It is Mahadbhuta. It is Anirvachaniya. One Mahamaya Shakti is making this impossible possible. Shankaracharya says, what is this Maya's work? Aghatita ghatana patiyasi Maya. What is impossible, an impossible thing is made possible by the strange power of Maya. Now, what is the way for us to realize that we are the Atman? This is the next point. Can this be realized? The great masters say that we are in truth nothing but Brahman and Brahman alone. Atman alone. Every other idea that we have about ourselves is a fictional idea. Vivekananda says in his complete works, don't speak lie to yourself. Don't say that you're weak, you're pitiable, you're miserable. These are all just fictional ideas. Swami Vivekananda says, call upon the sleeping soul. Teach yourself, teach everyone his real nature. Call upon the sleeping soul and see how it awakes. Power will come, glory will come, goodness will come. Everything that is excellent will come when the sleeping soul is aroused to self-conscious activity. So the whole method of Vedanta is to rouse the sleeping soul. We never tried. This is what Sri Ramakrishna says. We should try it. We should try to awaken this Abheda Drishti, Advaita Drishti, Advaita Bhava should be there in the back of the mind in our day-to-day life. And the consequence of that is something indescribable. It will radically change the human life from its very foundation. It is a matter of experience. If you try it out, we can see the results for ourselves. So what is the way to know that we are the Atman? So the great masters say that we have to initiate ourselves into the process of self-inquiry. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? This I. What is the true nature of this I? There is a wonderful process. And this has to be done through Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. Wonderful stages. First, you have to listen to this great truth from the mouth of a eligible teacher, an acharya, a guru. Mere reading of books won't work. Mere reading of books can give us some vague ideas. You have to sit at the feet of a real teacher and listen from him what he says. And then let your mind now delve deep into what you have heard from the mouth of the teacher. And then you meditate upon what is being told about our true nature. When we follow this method, you will see that slowly the cloud in our mind, which is hiding the supreme reality, which is our true nature, the Atman, as this cloud begins to move away, to the extent it has moved away, we will first begin to understand what Atman is. Then we will begin to feel its presence in our hearts. Then slowly we will begin to perceive it. And finally, when the cloud is completely removed, we will experience the Atman. It is a gradual process. A process of removing this cover, this process of discovering this real nature of each one of us. A curtain is there which is hiding this truth, that's all. And Maya is that curtain. But when we begin to inquire, this curtain of Maya will begin to move away. It will. That is what is the teachings of the great masters. This is a kind of a prayer. We are asking Maya to move away so that the truth comes out and we realize the true nature. So we need to initiate this process of self-inquiry and ask ourselves, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And when the teacher says, what is our true nature? Asti kaschit swayam nityam. Aham pratyaya lambanaha avasthatraya sakshi san pancha kosha vilakshana. There is some reality, asti kaschit. There is a reality inside, an unchanging dimension within each one of us. It is not something up in the sky. It is not something to come after death. It is here itself, now, this very moment. The great masters teach, Asti Kaschit, there is an unchanging dimension in each one of us, which is Aham Pratyaya Lambana, which is the very witness of this Aham Pratyaya, Aham, which is just behind that. It is so close, which is Avasthatraya Sakshi, which is the witness of all the three states of human experiences, waking, dream, and sleep, and which is Pancha Kosha Vilakshana, which is different from the Pancha Koshas. Now, when we experience this, then we will understand that what the great masters have told, every single statement is true. Brahmaivedam sarvam, Atmaivedam sarvam. This idea of mutual separateness and mutual distancing, then we will understand how fictional this idea is. What is existing is Brahman and Brahman alone. Is there actually a distance between you, me, and God? This distance is just a fictional distance. When we inquire into it, you will see that we are one with the supreme reality. Of course, this is a process, it's a gradual evolution as we go on practicing this. There is involved a great amount of practice in it. When we begin to practice it, then this truth is dawned. Our true nature will come out. Now, just as we have seen the consequences of our life based on Bheda Drishti, we have seen the first consequence of this life which is based on Bheda Drishti is what? Bhayam. Now the first consequence of our life which is based on Advaita Bhava and Advaita Drishti, the first result of that is Abhayam. What a wonderful thing it is. This fear which is there at the core of every human personality, which is throbbing there, it's a reality as long as we don't understand who we are. When we begin to understand our true nature, this fear begins to disappear. What a great blessing it is. The boon of Advaita is, first thing is Abhayam. Abhayam vai praptosi Janaka. Yagyavalkya tells this to Janaka in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Abhayam vai praptosi. Oh Janaka, you have attained Abhayam. The first consequence of this Advaita Bhava is Abhayam, fearlessness. Second is strength. All our weakness comes from Dvaita Drishti. As long as we consider this sense of separation from God, from the world, from each other to be real, we are always weak and weak and weak and weak. We are fearful. We are always insecure. And when this sense of separation and distancing begins to disappear, what emerges out of that is first a sense of fearlessness. Second comes strength. All the weakness, durbalta, goes away. And third comes freedom. Freedom from bondage. What a wonderful thing is. Swamiji says, there is only one song of Vedanta is what? Freedom, freedom, freedom. Fearlessness, fearlessness, fearlessness. Strength and strength and strength. Now this is the consequence of our life, everyday life, if it is based on Advaita Bhava and Advaita Drishti. Then what? As I said, if our life is based upon Dvaita Drishti, we are always apurna, unfulfilled. The moments this distancing is gone, the sense of separation from God is gone, all apurnata is gone. We experience ourselves to be purna, complete, fulfilled. Then the other outcome of this is nitya tripti. All our atripti is gone. In the state of Dvaita, in the state of mutual separation, no matter how much money we have with us, no matter how much enjoyments, physical enjoyments we have in life, we shall never be fulfilled. When this Advaita Bhava becomes a reality in our life, we understand we are Nitya Tripta, we are Nitya Purna, and all desires begin to vanish from our hearts. What to desire? I am eternally fulfilled. And lastly comes freedom from the cycle of birth and death. Mukti, freedom, mukti, mukti, mukti. This is one song of this Vedanta. So strengthening, wonderful. Swami Vivekananda was the greatest preacher of this message to the entire human race in the modern times. But this has been the voice of all the great masters of the past. Shankaracharya, he echoed the same idea throughout the length and breadth of this land 1200 years ago. The rishis of the Upanishads, all of them, unanimously, Advaita. This is the simple truth which can completely, radically transform the human life, our everyday life. We are not talking about the problems of unemployment or poverty or not having this, not having that. We are talking about existential problems. Where is the solution for fear? Where is the solutions for apurnata? What is the solution for atripti? What is the solution for bandhana? That solution is Advaita Bhava. When this Advaita Bhava becomes a reality in our everyday life, the first transformation, a radical transformation, will be a sense of freedom from fear, freedom from desires, freedom from all limitations and weaknesses. What a wonderful thing it is. So, Shankaracharya, in one of his verses, he says, how is this man who is established in this wonderful drishti of Advaita, he says, beautifully he says, that even without enjoying anything in this world, he is nityatripta. Even when he is nirdhanopi sadha tushta. He is nirdhana. Perhaps he doesn't have a single paisa in his pocket, but is sadha tushta. Nirdhanopi sadha tushta. And what? Asahayo api mahabala. Outwardly he may appear to be a helpless person, outwardly. But actually he is a mahabali. Who can be stronger than this person who is fully established in this Advaita Bhava and Advaita Drishti? And even without enjoying anything of this physical world, he is Nityatriptaha. What a radical transformation comes into the life of this person who is established in this Advaita Bhava. Now finally, the last point. The consequence of this Advaita Drishti in our everyday life is that for this person, everything is divine. This is the way we divinize or spiritualize everything. For this person, there exists nothing but Brahman and Brahman alone. Everything is divine. Everything is God and God alone. Nothing separated from God exists for him. Now for him, his whole life is nothing but a continuous act of worship. This is beautifully expressed. What comes to my mind is Bhagavan Vyasadeva in his Shiva Manasa Puja Stotram, a beautiful stotram where he depicts this idea, where an imagery is used. Many of you might have heard this shloka, where Vyasadeva says, Atma tvam girija mati sahachara prana shariram griham puja te vishayopabhoga rachana nidra samadhisthiti sanchar padayo pradakshana vidhi stotrani sarva giro yat yat karma karuni tattadakhilam shambho tava aradhanam. What a wonderful thing. Now for this person, yat yat karma karomi, whatever actions I do, it is, oh Lord, it's all your aradhana, it's all your worship. A person who sees everywhere one non-dual reality, for him everything becomes divine, everything becomes sacred, everything is God and nothing else. Now in this one thing we should remember, an outcome. I should come back to our Advaita Ashrama a little bit. In the initial stages of spiritual life, it is good and it is necessary that we see God in a certain human form, in a certain photograph which is inside a frame. In the initial stages of the spiritual life, it is necessary and it is important to see God in a certain human form inside a photo frame and we worship it. But as we grow in spiritual life, there is a need to outgrow this idea of Ishvara. Now for this person who has grown into this Advaita Drishti, this world itself is the photograph of God. This world which we are, this Virat which we are experiencing, itself is the picture of God. Not a photo which we have inside a frame and which we worship daily. That is important in the initial stages of life, but for the person who has got himself established in the supreme truth, for him this Virat itself is the photograph of God. And he worships this Virat. This is what Vivekananda wanted in Advaita Ashrama also, interestingly. That is why in Advaita Ashrama, he didn't want the worship of this kind, worship of God in some particular form, in the form of some idol. No. He wanted the spiritual aspirants to come there and understand the supreme reality in its true sense, where this world which we are experiencing itself is seen as divine. And for this, he started the Advaita Ashrama. If you read his prospectus properly, you will see what wonderful was Vivekananda's vision. That is why he didn't want the worship of Sri Ramakrishna in Mayavati, in the Advaita Ashrama. A very unique, wonderful contribution by Swami Vivekananda. Finally, let me come to the point from where I started. I started from Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna says, tie the knowledge of Advaita to the corner of your cloth and then lead your everyday life. What an important teaching it is. Usually we don't pay much attention to this teaching. I consider this to be a very significant and important teaching of Sri Ramakrishna, because he was a perfect embodiment of this Advaita Drishti. For Sri Ramakrishna, nothing existed apart from Brahman and Brahman's Shakti. This is the only thing he knew. There is no world existing separated from Brahman. There is no Jiva existing separated from Brahman. There is no Ishvara also existing separated from Brahman. Everything is Brahman and Brahman alone. This is what Sri Ramakrishna embodied in his life. Thank you so much. See, if you have to come to this point, we have to do sadhana as the path shown by the great masters. The beautiful path has been laid down in our scriptures. But mere reading of the books won't work. Many people think that just by reading, I'll read this Upanishad. See, very important point, which I always tell to our devotees who come to the Mayavati also. The practice is Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam. It is not Vachanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam. There's a big difference. The rishis didn't ask us to read something and then think and then meditate. There is a huge world of difference between reading and listening from an eligible person. When we listen it from an eligible person, what is happening is you're transmitting the conviction of one person to the other. This the books cannot do. It is impossible. So the method is not Vachanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam. The method is Shravanam. Sit at the feet of a right person and listen to him about this great truth and the conviction about it which he will transmit through his words. And sit like a baby at his feet and just receive it with an open mind, with Shraddha. Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. If we don't have Shraddha in the words of the Guru and the Shastras, we won't be able to move one step in this direction. The Shraddha is that component. Shankaracharya in his Brihadaranyaka Bhashya, he says, Shraddha is the starting point. Now all this talking about Advaita Vedanta, it can be received by people with Shraddha. If somebody has got Shraddha, it will appeal to that person. But a person who doesn't have Shraddha, it will make no sense to that person. So what makes the difference between person to person is the presence of strong Shraddha and the absence of it. So in this way, when we adopt the methodology of Shravana, Manana and Nididhyasanam and Sadhana, it is based upon wonderful life, a life of purity, a life of renunciation. Sannyasa purvakat atma jnanad eva mukti. Shankaracharya would say again and again, this mukti is attained by atma jnana, which is preceded by the spirit of sannyasa. Again, I want all of you to understand, when we talk about sannyasa, don't think about gerva. That is the external sign. What sannyasa actually means is a state of mind, a mind which is completely turned away from this manifested world, a mind which has completely given up all its fascinations for the thing of this world. That is a sannyasi's mind. He has no more any moha for the things which he is seeing. Anyone who has got this kind of a mind, he is bound to attain Atmajnana. There is just no way. Sri Ramakrishna beautifully says this point. Shankaracharya says, see, where is the difference between the teachings of these great masters? Shankaracharya says, Sannyasa purvakat atmajnanat eva mukti. Mukti is attained only by complete sannyasa of this world. Sri Ramakrishna would put it in a simple way. He would say, if a thread has to be put into the eye of a needle, even if one string hangs out, the thread won't pass through the eye of the needle. This is what he is actually putting. Shankaracharya's ideas, complete sannyasa, complete renunciation is the way. Unless we completely turn away from the world, there is no hope of attaining God.
They are not the sannyasis.
No.
How do they follow?
See, this difference between sannyasis, Maharaj, let us make one point very clear. There is nothing like householder and sannyasis. We are human beings. I always tell this point. Let us come out of this superficial categorization. The spiritual message is meant for everybody. As human beings, our main purpose of this human birth is to realize God. Whether you are in the married framework of life or whether you are single, anywhere. See what the scripture says. This human birth is durlabham. This is a rare opportunity which we have got. Do we understand the importance of where we are stationed? In this human body, this is the greatest body that is existing in this creation. And what is the purpose of this human body? The only purpose, whether you are married or whether you are not married, doesn't make any sense. The very Upanishads talk about the human beings. It doesn't speak about this or that. As human beings, our main purpose is to understand who we are and solve the mystery. That's all. And the way to do that is late. Renunciation is the way, nothing else.
Okay, what about listening and writing simultaneously?
Listening and writing. Who is doing that? Shakti Babu is a very good writer, I know that.
Listening and writing.
Very good. Oh, that is a good thing, Maharaj. But if you write down what you're listening, but listening is more important actually. See, the transmission of conviction, books cannot do that. No books can do that. It is, see, life is lit by life. Life is lit by life. When you are listening to a person who is living that kind of a life, it will enlighten your own hearts. Book in itself won't be able to do that. This is a simple truth. Any other question? Yeah? Yeah.